If you are working on playing music by ear, or if you feel like you've reached a plateau with it, you might be facing a kind of obstacle that I see a lot of my students face. Sometimes when they are working to transcribe a melody or chord progression, they get kind of overwhelmed or flooded. The music flows by, and in trying to capture it symbolically, writing down or playing out on the instrument or whatever, they get overwhelmed, and it shuts down or at least interferes with their ability to listen. They jump to conclusions about what they are hearing before they are really hearing, and this results in a kind of guessing that doesn't lead to growth. So I offer them some suggestions and strategies that I'm going to offer you. If your interest in ear training might be paired with an interest in learning music theory, that's really great. And if you're into music theory, you know all sorts of facts and relationships between scales, chords, modes, principles of voice leading, and so on. And in music theory, there is a lot to know. And if you have a good math mind, you can pick up a lot of it quite quickly. And again, that's great. But here's the thing. Developing your ear works very differently from developing your music theory mind. And that can lead to some real dissonance, I guess you could say. And as a result, what can happen when you practice musical listening is that your mind gets cluttered with all that thinking. And that gets in the way of perceiving. And perceiving, detailed perceiving, is the foundation of ear training and playing by ear. In this video, you're going to get a deeper understanding for the differences between these two disciplines and a handful of strategies for keeping your listening fresh, focused, and effectively connected to your music theory knowledge. First, we're going to untangle music theory thinking from ear training thinking. And second, you'll experience learning a concept, or at least reviewing, depending on where you're at, a concept from each perspective. Then we'll do a short ear practice so you can experience directly what I'm talking about. Finally, you'll get a handful of strategies to keep your listening fresh and focused and maximize the effective connection between ear thinking and eye thinking. I'm Hans at tuneindigo.com. Let's begin. An understanding of music theory entails, first and foremost, knowing your major and minor scales, the spellings of different chords and different keys, modes, principles of voice leading, and so on, even like the functions of chords, like what they're actually doing. And what the study of theory generally entails is in some way manipulating symbols of notation to support understanding how music works. It's a delightful thing to get into, and I really love music theory, and it has always been pretty easy for me. While music theory is obviously about music, it relies heavily on visual information and cultures your rational mathematical sensibilities. If you've ever taken a music theory class, it is likely that you did a lot of work without listening to music. You might have done 4-part writing without playing any of it back, and you probably memorized a lot of facts, not just key signatures and chord spellings, but also rules for writing in parts and these rules for chord functions. Let's call this kind of thinking eye thinking. And that's because this kind of learning uses a lot of visual information. And as W.A. Matthew puts it in one of my favorite books, the eyes are hungry. They like to gobble up information, and they can do it really quickly. And when they are working with your mathematical rational mind, they use up a lot of energy that could be devoted to listening. Now, ear training, by contrast, at its core is about awareness and perception. That's really it. You gradually sharpen your auditory attention so that you can perceive music in a deeper way. Now, this deeper way does mean attaching names, symbols, nomenclature, and so on to the things you hear. It means being able to hold music in your mind, which is called audiating, before making an effort to identify what it is in symbolic terms. We're going to call this kind of thinking ear thinking, where the music you are learning resides in your mind purely as music, purely as sound, and you allow yourself to be led by the experience of listening. There's time for attaching symbols later. For example, here are 2 ways to understand the difference between the major and the minor scales, the eye mind /music theory way, and the ear mind, the ear training way. Here we go. Here's the theory way. The major scale is a collection of 7 notes that basically has this pattern. It goes, there's a whole step, another whole step, another half step, another whole step, another whole step, another whole step, and then a half step at the end. So we've got a major scale that sounds like this, and it has the pattern or the code inside it that goes whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Now, the minor scale is a little different. It's got a lowered third, a lowered sixth, compared to the major scale, a lowered seventh. And the whole half combination is whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. The minor scale, again, it takes the third, sixth, and seventh notes of the major scale and lowers them by a half step each. So that's the difference between a major scale and a minor scale. Okay, now take a moment to notice the thoughts in your mind. Do you see anything? Do you feel anything in your body? Do you hear anything? And what other conceptualizations in your mind are engaged? Just think about that. All right, here's the ear training way. Now I'm going to show you the same concept, but I'm going to teach it to you in the ear way. All right, here I go. Here's a thing. It goes like this. And I'm going to do it once, and then you echo it back. Sounds like this. Now echo that back. And now echo this back. With me, here we go. Okay, what did you notice? What did you hear? What did you see? What did you feel? What concepts are in your mind? Okay, so we've got this one thing that goes like this, and then another thing that goes like this. Okay, now here's a different thing. You can just echo it right back. Now echo it with me, humming or singing or whistling. With me. Okay, now I'm going to take the first little bunch of each of those two things and let's zero in on those. Hey, let's do this. Let's sing it with numbers like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Go ahead and do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now this other thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Between those two, the first one and the second one, which note, 1, 2, 3, or 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, is different between the two. Now, if you said 3, you're right. It is the difference between the first one, the major scale, and the second one, the minor scale. That third note is different. Now, there are 2 other notes that are different, but we're not going to get to those right now because I want you to really lock in on the sound of the difference between the major first part, the lower part of the scale, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the minor scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now you know this one thing, and now you feel this one thing, and now you've heard this one thing. The third note of the minor scale is different from the major scale in this way. Major, minor. Okay, so there we go. You just heard me explain the major versus the minor, first with the eye way and then with the ear way. What did you notice was different between those two ways of explaining or understanding or thinking about, conceptualizing the major and minor scale? Did you notice that singing and experiencing came first in the ear training way? Did you notice that I talked more in the theory way? How about, did you notice that I covered less content in the ear training way? What else did you notice? Anything else you noticed? Go ahead and comment it below. All right, now let's put this to use. If I asked you to figure out this melody by ear, notice what happens in your mind. I'll play it again. And all I'm going to tell you is that it starts on C. What happens to your mind naturally? What thoughts do you have having heard this? Now 4 times. Now, you might try to write it down. If you're at your instrument, you might try to figure out each note, right? But did you try singing it back? Da 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 da. Now, singing it back is the ultimate way to internalize what you hear and to ensure that you've heard and internalized the thing you're actually hearing. If I go and I go da 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 da, and I notice that there's a gray area, a foggy area in my singing, I'm going to realize that that is a difficult part. Now, this is true for simple songs, and it's true for any kind of complicated jazz thing, like the beginning of St. Vitus Dance. Right? That's a scale that I can sing. Da 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 da. Of course, I don't know how advanced you are, and perhaps you can imagine this stuff on your instrument right off the bat. But if I asked you something relatively simple, like, what's the last note in this melody? Now going back to... But if I asked you something relatively simple, like, what's the last note of the melody, you might find some eye thinking popping up in your mind. And if you're like a lot of people, you might decide that if you can't do this right away, how are you going to do anything? So here are some solutions to separating, or at least prioritizing, your ear, your musical listening, over your music theory or eye thinking. Not just separate those two things, but sharpen each one, and to connect music theory to your listening skills appropriately and in a way that's effective. Okay, first, slow down. Just slow down. Understand that ear thinking takes longer. It works on a different time scale. 2, sing or hum everything. Now, I teach solfege, and I believe that solfege is a very effective way to understand what you're hearing, but even that is a symbol system. So before solfege can happen, we need to just be able to sing or hum or whistle or kazoo, which is humming, everything we hear, or everything we attend to internalize. Third, notice symbolic thoughts. Just notice them. As you're trying to figure out something by ear, are you jumping to what the note name is? Are you jumping to the position on the keyboard? Are you jumping to the position on the fretboard or the fingerings on the instrument? Are you doing those things before, in your mind, you can echo it back, or before you're hearing? We want to lead with our voice and our ear. 4, when you feel yourself calculating through scales and intervals, guessing basically, before you can really internally echo what you've heard, slow down and recede back into the sound of the thing. Finally, notice how much auditory stuff you can hold in your mind. Like, how much can you actually audiate and work on lengthening that. Finally, notice self-criticizing thoughts. They live there with your I mind, and they also get in the way of perceiving clearly and freshly and focusedly. Ultimately, we want our I mind and our ear mind to work together with our imagination to learn and create music we really love. We want music theory to work hand in hand with our ear training, and to really do that, each tool must be sharp and well developed on its own. I hope you found this helpful. How do you learn music by ear? Do you use eye mind and ear mind at the same time, separately? Please drop a comment on your way to subscribing and maybe even liking this video. And go ahead and pay a visit to tuneintogolearning.com, where I've got a whole bunch of stuff to help you further your creative musical journey. Thanks a lot for listening.